Thank you, Mr Acting President. I rise to add some brief comments in relation to the Aboriginal Lands Parliamentary Standing Committee, as this will be the final report before the committee is disbanded. It is a shame that the state Labor government has chosen to abolish this committee, which has done some great work since it was proclaimed almost 20 years ago today. The Aboriginal Lands Parliamentary Standing Committee was closely based on the Parliamentary Committees Act, with its functions expanding to inquire into a broad range of matters affecting Aboriginal people, including health, housing, education, economic development, employment and training. It has provided many members of Parliament with the opportunity to visit Aboriginal people on country, including but not limited to the AP Wirelands, Maralinga, Oodnadatta, Davenport, Port Augusta, Ceduna, Point Pearce, Rakan and Caniba. From its outset, it was supported by both major parties, with its inaugural presiding member, the late Honourable Terry Roberts, noting the strong support received from the opposition Liberal Party as well as from minor parties. It was also the only standing committee over quite a few years to have a statutory obligation to report its work annually. The first priority of the committee, as stated by then presiding member Jay Weatherall in 2007, has been to consult with Aboriginal people in their home communities and to engage with their elected representatives and leaders. The Honourable Peter Arnold, MP, put it well when he said back in 1987, during debate on the Pitjantjatjara Lands Rights Act Amendment Bill, that, and I quote, "The fact that it gets members of Parliament out into the lands, whether it be Pitjantjatjara lands or the Maralinga lands, can only be of benefit from an educational point of view for those members who are fortunate enough to be appointed to that committee. Too often we tend to act too remotely from the real issues that we debate in this House." End quote. I believe the strength and success of this committee lies in its wealth of information received from visiting far-reaching places that members of Parliament would not normally have the opportunity to visit on their own. Its annual reports over the years that are full of insights from some of our most remote lands and towns, from community members who would not be used to having parliamentarians rocking up on their doorstep. This has helped the committee to develop a deeper understanding of how services and programs are being delivered to Aboriginal people and to assess whether they are meeting their needs. Among the important issues that the committee heard and were able to influence include supporting dialysis treatment, inquiring into Aboriginal housing, which contributed to the Premier Marshal's South Australian Aboriginal Housing Strategy 2021 to 2031, inquiring into governance standards, Mr Acting President, in Aboriginal community-controlled organisations, inquiring into pathways to support young Aboriginal people and Aboriginal women to step into community leadership roles, and playing a pivotal role in providing recommendations to the Stolen Generations Reparation Bill, which resulted in an $11 million state government contribution to the scheme. The Aboriginal Lands Parliamentary Standing Committee helped to achieve practical outcomes, which is why it is unfortunate that the Malinauskas government feels it needs to abolish it in favour of a First Nations voice to Parliament. The First Nations voice, which now has had its first elections delayed while we wait in a holding pattern. Now, one could be forgiven for thinking that it is thanks to the federal government's Federal Voice campaign that what was once an important issue on the state government's agenda is now having the can kicked down the road. The Aboriginal Lands Parliamentary Standing Committee provided a vital function for community members to make representations to parliamentarians on their own turf. By abolishing this committee, another instrument has been removed from this parliament to get us out of the city to visit and engage with Indigenous communities on their own soil. While the First Nations Voice Act 2023 provides for the state voice to address Cabinet, Parliament, Chief Executive and Ministers, it says nothing about requiring or enabling parliamentarians to get out of the CBD and into Aboriginal communities. It would be a missed opportunity and appear counterintuitive to abolish this effective standing committee and to remove the frequent engagements between committee MPs and the Aboriginal people that has been ongoing for 20 years.